How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and review this thing, the GMC Brigadier 8000. I actually just uploaded this to YouTube, and it wasn't doing that crackly mic thing when I quickly checked through, but for some reason it is now, so I've just deleted some of the audio and we'll give it another go. Yeah, this won the vote, so we'll send it around the course and see how it does compared to the rest. Engine, we've got the Westline V6. Long story short, it's S Plus on the power, so that's pretty nice. I'm always going to go for the high range, pretty much. There might be benefits to the off-road in this, but for the sakes of the review videos, it's sort of handy to keep them all fairly level. And I use the high range in pretty much everything I can. The suspension, you've got raised and tuned custom. There's not much difference between them. I don't know why the stock one is locked for me, but I'm not really bothered either way. I'm in no rush to get that, wherever it is. Yeah, I mean, like I said, the raised suspension, like the tuned custom's a little bit higher, but the main issue, I suppose, really, is that the tyres aren't that massive on this. I believe, are they 46 or 47 inch? 46 with like the top size tyre, which is pretty small, really. Even some of the smaller tyred trucks have got like 47 inch tyres and stuff. I'm going to go for the chain, because sadly with pretty much all the American trucks, it never gives you the option of muds. So in that case, I'm definitely going for the chained, which are not the best version of chained, but I still think they're going to do better than like the off-road and the all-terrain and that. The winch, I've gone for the strongest one. There is engageable diff locks. You can have a spare wheel, but I'm not going to put it on because it sits quite low on the chassis. The snorkel's almost as high as the roof, not quite, but it'll do the job. The all-wheel drive, yeah, I'm obviously going for all-wheel drive, but they've actually coded in like the front axle changes, depending on which one you choose. As for all these add-ons, to be fair, I believe it can have just about everything. It's got all like the maintenance trays, the fuel, the sideboards, the cranes, the logging crane, a small logging cradle thing. Obviously, I don't think any of them have been given the medium one. And it also has saddle high and saddle low. So, yeah, I believe that's like just about everything. Personally, I don't add these mud flat things onto the back. They might come in handy in some situations. They look alright as well. It's just for me personally, I've found little situations where I'd rather just keep them off. But maybe if I was sticking a loaf on the back, it might help, like, so the loaf wheels don't touch this truck's wheels. Yeah, there's all sun visor and all that. There's nothing too interesting. These bumpers, the stock one sits very flat and flush, and for the most part, they're kind of similar. I'm going to go for this one in the end, just because even though it's got that little middle bit, it's kind of sloped, so you might be able to scrape off something rather than just butt up against it. And yeah, overall it sits pretty nice and high, but I'd say between this one and probably the next bumper down, that's a bit like the stock one, just with the edges pinched in. With the exhaust, I prefer these because it points the smoke outwards, but if you do a lot of like interior driving in first person view, you might want to go for this one, because then when you stick your head out the window to look behind you, obviously with this one the exhaust is going to be a little bit in your way. The view actually isn't that bad even with those exhausts, but yeah, again, if you do a lot of first person view driving, that might be the best option. I just stuck some chrome alloys on. It's got quite a lot of choice of alloys, pretty normal tyres, so it gives you quite a lot. All these little custom paint jobs at the bottom, I'm not overly amazingly keen on any of them, but to be fair, they do kind of suit the look and age of the truck. But this thing's got a custom suspension, so yeah, I'm going for that. It's got a big fat red bear on the side and some kind of eagle or something on the front. And yeah, overall looks pretty good. Got some nice bright colours, so yeah, that's the one I'm going for. So when we take a look outside, overall, I mean, it looks quite a nice truck. I quite like the old school American looking ones. Again though, because the tyres aren't massive, you can see those fuel tanks, they don't sit incredibly low, but they're going to be the first thing you're going to kind of hit and beach on, really. They sit lower than the chassis at that point. Interior view, you can actually see the mirror there, which is quite a big mirror for the size of the truck. You can see out the back, but the window's really dirty for some reason. There's no rear view mirror, but it doesn't really matter. That mirror I quite like, because I can sort of see forward and I can see the edges of my tyres, so I can sort of see what they're up to. And you see, when I look out, I can still see the garage door and my tyres. That exhaust is clearly blocking some of the view, but overall it's not that bad. The horn, yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, it's not amazing, but it's got a bit of oomph to it, so it'll do. Yeah, as for revving the engine, it revs very quickly. It goes up to about 2,500, I believe. And yeah, as far as like, I don't know how much difference it really makes if they rev quick or not. But whatever, it does. It revs quick. Yeah, stick it in high. You can stick it in high even when it's very low, to be honest. Like even slow speed, and it'll let you do it. It's pretty relaxed with how much it lets you do that. Every trailer, I believe, it can have, because it can have the saddle high, saddle low, and obviously towable trailers. That's just a few examples of like roughly how high or low the trailer sits when it's actually connected. So this is the first test really, and I kind of had a feeling this was going to be the result. Obviously trucks like the Dolphin and the Vorons and that, they can usually just nail over here in high gear, but like I said, because the American trucks for the most part, I believe there is one or two exceptions, I'm sure the Twin Steer has muds, or it might have the chained muds, but anyway, yeah, you have to drop down. You spend quite a lot of time overall, low range with the diffs on, which is why I'm saying for some people the off-road gearbox might be the better choice, but I don't know. Some of the finer detail seems to have been taken out of some of the terrain, where even if you have the 3 low range gears, it's just a bit more wheel spin and a bit less wheel spin, but it all seems to be the same speed regardless. But either way, it crawled through there. I mean, it did it. It wasn't struggling, it's just a little bit slow about it. It stuck it into high though, going up that hill, and it motors along. Again, it's S plus on the power, but part of that can be achieved by having a very light truck, which is what this test is good for, ramming the trees. I nailed one tree when I was kind of flying downhill with the wind behind me, but that second tree immediately stopped me, so yeah, it achieves part of that S plus rating by the fact that there really isn't a lot of weight in this truck, which can be an advantage and a disadvantage on various situations that we'll kind of get into throughout the video. So going through this little section here, pretty standard, the same as most trucks. I mean, to be honest, in a nutshell, this truck is kind of, there's areas where I think it is above average, but not that far above average. It doesn't really knock it out the park anywhere. There is one thing actually nearer the end of the video that is pretty good about it, but yeah, for the most part, like I said, it's alright, but it's not amazing. It's not going to knock your socks off or anything like that. I had to drop it out of high to go through that last little muddy bit, but most trucks do have to do that, so again, like I said, it's sitting around where kind of all the others are. Rock test, I'm testing the suspension. As you can see, I take the odd 1 damage, but I never really took anything crazy. Obviously, the game control you a bit and just randomly go bang now when you're not even really hitting anything, but in actual rock testing, yeah, for the most part, I didn't really take any damage apart from the odd little 1 here and there. You've certainly got enough suspension health, it's not really going to be an issue. I mean, that was a pretty big rock I just ran over, and I didn't even do any damage. This thing, it picks up quite a bit of speed, even in auto. Anti-terrorist barricade, give it a bit of a fast slap, and yeah, it rolled. I mean, that anti-terrorist barricade did its job. Fortunately, I did actually roll back to my wheels, so yeah, I was able to just carry on. It'd be a bit of a pain having to recover to the garage, just to drive all the way back here. This little mud section, cutting through, what's it, Black River crossing, it's... In its defence, everything is pretty bloody slow in this first section, like from the best truck to the worst truck. But you can see now, I mean, it's a bit of a slow crawl. I cut about 1.5 minutes out there. I'm getting to the point now where you can see like the current gets a little bit stronger towards the side, pushing me sideways. That'll start hitting me about now. And because this truck doesn't weigh a hell of a lot, the current is actually now pushing my nose. I'm steering right for the most part, probably leaving it to straighten up a little bit. But yeah, like it's light enough that the current can affect it. And again, it's a little bit slow through here. I mean, it feels like it's capable once you put it into the low range with the diffs on, but it's just at the cost of speed. So it's one of them where it's like you're going pretty bloody slow for a lot of situations, really. But next up, we're on Northport for the old snow test. This first bit I do in high, and it, like normal, it ticks along there. It's about now when the snow slows you down. Climbing over for the little barrier test. Because I've got the chained on, it can at least grip onto the barrier and kind of jump over it. However, because those tyres are only 46 inch, they don't sit high enough even with the raised custom suspension, and those fuel tanks are catching. The good thing is, to be fair I suppose, is that once I pluck all these trees out and get that tree stump, they're not so hooked that that's it, you completely lock. Some trucks are just, it'll try and lever you up in the air and all sorts over letting go where it's caught, but that one did actually scrape its way off. And you see again, I mean, it's going to do it because it's got the chain that sort of bite in, but because of those low, sorry, there's an ambulance driving past, because of those low tyre sizes, it's just, yeah, if they were bigger, taller tyres, they'd have a much easier time at jumping over these. And this barrier, it's like a bit of a stage 2 barrier, it's a little bit taller from the side I approach it. It did well to grip up. It also means the bumper doesn't get in the way a lot, and that sits nice and high. But yeah, again, as soon as I got over it, just beached itself on the fuel tanks, and I need to stick a winch over to this lamp post. Once I got that done though, I'm now not pulling on the winch or anything, I'm trying to get it over there by its own steam. And again, I mean, like I said, a bit above average, because that's fairly respectable considering the size of the tyres, but it's one of them where there's plenty of other trucks that could climb over there, so yeah, above average, but not in any way amazing, really. For a super snow test, kind of bumped its way up there without rolling, which is nice. I've rolled a few trucks, kind of casually fly my way up there. I did a little bit in auto. It seemed best though, fuel-wise anyway, because you're just going to use more fuel for the same speed. Low range diffs on, and it's ticking along alright. You can see where like the truck's pretty light, because like now I'm butting into these trees, and yeah, they're actually giving me quite a lot of resistance. A big, sturdy, heavy truck, just they don't really stand a chance at slowing you down. But again, I mean, it got over there pretty comfortably, just not necessarily very fast. I mean, overall, this kind of reminds me of like the White Western Star, the GMC, yeah, 9500, those sort of trucks. Climbing up this rock, it got up there quite nicely, but you'll see now my rear end starts to skid around to the left a bit, which is kind of sending my nose to the right, but fortunately it didn't go too far, so I was able to carry on. Dropping down again, the bumper isn't really an issue at all. It does sit high enough that it's also got a very short kind of chin on it. The front tyres sit very close to the actual front of the truck. So next up, the old jump in the wall test. I always like this one, but it's also a good chance sometimes to see the weight distribution on the truck, which we get a chance here. I had a good feeling it should make it over here because it's got a nice high front bumper. The first time I got that far, but I just landed sort of awkward on the back wheels, but it was a good chance to show the weight distribution. I must pretty much be in the centre point now, because even though it's tipped to the nose again, it'll slowly lever its way back up to level like that. So basically, well, say 50% of the weight is just where those rear axles are, and then obviously all the rest in front is like another 50%. So to get out of this time, I do come back in a second. I had to give it another go. Stuck a winch on it, kind of winched it to that tree and just pulled the back end over, so it wasn't too bad. However, yeah, I came back because I kind of knew if I get a nice little run at it, it should have no issues. And there you go, almost had a dodgy bounce on the rear wheels again, but we made it over there, so it's pretty good. So tick in the box. Yeah, for kind of a little tree test, trying to push our way through the branches. Now, to be fair, this is, relatively speaking, a pretty small truck, so it shouldn't have too much trouble here, but the exhaust do stand up quite high compared to the truck, so, and they do have a chance of catching the branches. However, we, yeah, squeezed it through the gap, that's what she said, and it made it through pretty well, to be fair. Get to this point, I believe, yeah, it starts cocking one of its wheels. It can do that a little bit. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of weight in general. I wouldn't necessarily say it's weighted high up, it's just not particularly a lot of weight low down either. This bit though, just to show you, it beached there, but because there's so much weight at the back, it's levering the front up enough to where it could just scuff those fuel tanks until they cleared it, basically, and then it made it over that. So yeah, a lot of trucks, once they beach on that bit, that's it, like, you ain't got a chance of getting it over. Yeah, next up, the old cargo test. And overall, I mean, guesses wise, I should imagine it'd be pretty similar to all the others, and yeah, no surprise really, it is. It's about in line with, like, yeah, the White Western Star, the GMC 9500s, the Vorons, the Taiga, the Fleet Star, just all those sort. You'll see though, the steering, I think, is a little bit slow, particularly from like side to side, so when you want to go from, say, steering right to steering left. Hence why I overshot that, like the exit to that little yard there. Once you're on the roads though, again, this truck would have been so much more suited in like Michigan, because it actually motors along pretty nicely. Even though I'm in auto now, it's still picking up nicely through the gears, even with a trailer and a full load of cargo and everything. So yeah, it would have made a lot more sense on maps like that. Like this truck, the HX520 and the Cat CT681 are all a bit out of their depth really, I feel, on these new maps. And I've got no more missions left on like the original maps, not on this playthrough anyway. So cutting over this little snow section, it did alright to get that far. You can see though, because it's quite weighted near the back and then there's a trailer sat on it, your front can bob around a little bit, and obviously once your front's lifted up you get either understeer or no steering, so that's why I kind of went a little bit wide on that section. But again, low range diffs on, crawling through here. I'm just now running over like that little route that seemed to appear there about 6 months ago. And for the most part, it looks like the tyres are kind of just phasing through it. But yeah, it is actually, slowly but surely, it's crawling along here. Again, it feels like it's capable enough to do it. It's just, albeit at a bit of a leisurely pace. And like I said, situations like this, because you spend a lot of time in low range, you may want the off-road gearbox. However, as I said, I think they've took a bit of like the finer details of the terrain out, and it tends to be like, if I had the 3 low ranges now, if I put it in high-low, it'll just wheel spin a bit more, but it'll go about the same speed. If I put it in low-low, it'll wheel spin a bit less, but I'll go about the same speed. So there doesn't really seem to be a whole lot of variety within those gears these days. As I've said, they act more like a rev limiter than an actual separate low-range gear, so that's part of the reason why I'm not that desperate or bothered if I use them or not. Going along here, though, a little bit, again, not the sharpest turning circle. I did steer a bit late around that corner, but here a fair amount of trucks can't get into high range now. They'll either stall or just wheel spin, whereas this, I put it in high and it started to slowly fire up, but you could see there I fed in a bit of right hand steer, but then I couldn't feed left hand steering before I hit that trailer. Water test gets slowed down a little bit there with the deep water, but for the most part it's ticking along, it's staying in high, so that's about all I can expect. You'll see the lack of sharp steering there, sort of go a little bit wide for the size of the truck. And then going through here, the little rock gap test, it's I kind of had a feeling it'd be fine, because again, it's certainly not one of the bigger trucks, and yeah, a few inches to spare, but we scraped through there, no problems. This next bit is kind of like super snow, basically like original super snow. Yeah, it's particularly when you go down that little dip and up the other side. I believe I also catch a tree branch here. It's a bit of an OP tree branch, that one. But yeah, again, I mean, its low range diffs on is just the sort of default option that you need to go into, really. As for an interior view, sort of like see how the view out the front, that little tree that's sort of now behind the bonnet, it's made some of it disappear. The view's alright, you can obviously see the bonnet, but it's more that you sit quite low in your seat. If you could somehow like raise the seat sort of 4 to 6 inches, I still think you'd have enough sort of headroom and all the rest of it, but you'd actually have a little bit of a better view. But yeah, again, once you're in here, like, you can see out the back both ways. And there's also, as it tends to be with a lot of the other ones, like down in the bottom left-hand corner of the windscreen, obviously because the bonnet sort of curves away to the middle a bit, you've kind of got that bit for an extra bit of view, which again kind of sits in line with a lot of the trucks with bonnets on them, really. It hogs a little bit at the bottom middle of the screen, but it's sort of not the end of the world. It's not particularly bad. I mean, again, maybe a tiny bit above average, but nothing special, nothing bad. This bit, I was kind of expecting it to do alright, because it's got a nice high front bumper, and yeah, it didn't even catch itself there or take any damage or anything. It just motored through that, no problem, so that's pretty nice. Not doing too bad through these bits of mud. That patch there is a bit of a slow patch, and then going across here can punish quite a few trucks, whereas I believe now, yeah, I sort of leave it in auto, and even though it is wheel spinning, it's still travelling fast enough forward that yeah, it was worth sort of just leaving it in it. So sort of another one, really, slightly above average, but nothing that's going to yeah, blow your socks off or anything. So going for this rock bridge set, and to be fair, normally I stick it in high range here and go flat out. I don't really know why I didn't. Well, I've got it in high gear, but I'm kind of feathering the throttle, which to be fair is probably the more sensible option. You'll see the slow steering, particularly from lock to lock. I'm steering left, now I'm steering right. It doesn't feed it in quick enough, so I go off the edge of the rock. And then at this point, those rear tyres can't quite bump their way up the rock, even though I've got chained on, which do help with that. But again, because they're 46, if they were 50 inch, I believe it would have had no trouble there. And then here, I could have probably sat there and keep trying to floor it up there, but I was like, sod it, I'll reverse in the water. Gives me a little chance to see what the snorkel's like how well does it pull through the water and all the rest of it. I'd say this is kind of like medium depth water. And yeah, it did pretty fine there. There's a few big boulders under the water kind of here, so again, smaller tyres kind of struggle a little bit more to climb over them, but it did make it under its own steam. I didn't need to fling a winch out or anything. I did do a winch a minute ago on the bridge. I don't think it helped anyway, but I don't normally do that. It's just kind of autopilot muscle memory instinct, fling a winch out every time you get slowed down. So again, back to this snow. A lot of this is super snow along here, but there's no real speed gains to be had or anything. Sometimes as well, you get little sections where you speed up, but they're so kind of few and far between, and then this thing goes really slow in the super snow section, so it's not really worth trying to find those little quick bits. You may as well just stick it low range diffs on, and then at least it uses less fuel. Because to be fair, it's got 285 litres of fuel, but it does use quite a lot, especially when you consider how often you're best off dropping it into low range with the diffs on. Now you're using like a given amount of fuel, but you're also travelling at a very low speed. So even though like the Dolphin, for example, has got 200 litres, but it makes quite a lot of use of that fuel. Yeah, cutting across this little snow section, again, slowly but surely, didn't really feel like it was struggling, didn't look like it was going to tip or anything like that, but it was just not particularly snappy about it. So this is the Devil's Mud section. And again, I kind of had a similar feeling. I already kind of knew how this was going to pan out, but if I'd just stuck along this edge, I do believe it could have got through here the whole way under its own steam. Again, it feels pretty, like, I don't feel like it's going to stop any second when I was cutting along that edge, but obviously the second part of the test I kind of swerve into the deeper mud and see what happens. You can see the nice tall front bumper isn't causing any issues at the minute, but those slightly smaller tyres, they're now well beyond halfway, so you're not just sending mud under the tyre, there's also like the top layer of mud is now hitting the top half of your tyre, which is obviously going to kind of add extra drag really. It's probably getting deep enough now that those fuel tanks are starting to dip in a little bit. Long story short, I cut a bit out because I had to try and keep this video. The video was almost an hour. I edited another 10 minutes out to get it down to like 50 minutes. I wanted it nearer 40, but because this truck's a little bit slow at what it does, it took a bit longer to get the footage. So now, to get the video any shorter, I'd have to literally just cut bits out, which I don't really want to do because it's kind of a review and I send it all over the place. But yeah, in the end, it pretty much got stuck in the mud. I stuck a winch to the tree, dragged it out to the side, and then it drove out by its own steam along the side. The mountain rolling test, a few trucks like the Royal and the ANK rolled just there, but this thing, it's not too bad for tipping. This is like the little nose test, which maybe at this point, having the stock or the other bumper that looks pretty similar, just with the edges pinched in, may be better, because obviously this bumper adds a little bit more of a nose to it. But overall, it's still got a pretty good sort of nose/chin clearance, and it did reasonably well in that kind of, yeah, little nose test. And then this is almost like a little secondary test. It's a little bit easier than the last one, but some of the trucks that have got a particularly bad chin kind of all catch there, whereas this thing got over it with no issue. So again, I mean, I keep coming to the same conclusion, like a little bit above average, but nothing special. Next up though, the rolling test. And to its credit, I get to a point in a second where I thought it would go, and it was close. Now, it didn't quite go there. I only need to give it like literally one little blip of throttle and she's off. And normally smaller trucks are hindered here, but I believe because the exhaust sit taller, it kind of increased my distance to roll a full 360, which meant I landed back on my wheels more on the flatter snow than like when I'm still halfway down the hill. But to its credit, it did land on its wheels. It didn't just try and carry itself on after that, which a lot of them do. And again, I mean, it is a pretty light truck overall, so there's not a whole lot of weight to do a lot. In both ways, there's not a lot of weight to keep carrying you over onto your side. There's also not a lot of weight to keep you planted on your wheels. Turn around there with no issues though, and then yeah, going for this little hill climbing test, the White Western Star Hill. Well, I called it the White Western Star Hill because that was the first truck that attempted it, but to be fair, I think just about every single truck, or nearly every single truck, has made it up here. There was a few that drove me a bit mad. I think the Freightliner thing, M191 or whatever, before they fixed that, was a nightmare. To its credit, it got up that first bit of the hill. Normally I have to crab it over to the left a little bit further, particularly on trucks that don't have the mud versions, but that one actually got up there quite nicely. And then this is, well, it sort of ended up being a little test, I suppose. Trying to balance my way along the peak, and you have to drop down this little bit, and most things, yeah, go rolling off to the left. That was about as close as you're going to get without rolling, but it kind of made the nose swing around to the left as well, so I think that saved it a bit. If I tried to steer kind of to stay on the actual ridge, I probably would have rolled on that at that point. But I kind of got to have a little second chance at it. Went again, but starts tipping. Too much understeer, so I can't really fight it either way, and it goes. However, one bit I did want to leave in, if you look at all those tyre marks in the snow to the left of me, that's where the Zix 605R, the other day when I reviewed it, could only get up to that point, and because it didn't have the chained, it wheel span and I had to move over to the left. Even though these aren't the best chained, as I mentioned the other day, can get all the way to the top of this hill, and that's just another reason why I do quite like chained. I'm not saying they're outright the best, but funny enough though, I've always said I've not found anywhere that I can get with muds that I can't with chained, but that is an example of somewhere I can get with chained that I couldn't with muds. And then it was still able to like scrape those fuel tanks over the little ridge, but I rolled it on the other side, doesn't really matter, it's kind of the end of the test anyway. Yeah, next up, the old Quarry. Of course, got a little goddamn horse or vehicle with us. And going through this mud section, I believe the other day when I did this with the Zix 605R, that had the advanced special gearbox, but that was able to stay in like 5th gear and just ploughed through here all the way, whereas this thing, not really any surprise to be honest, but yeah, it's pretty much worth just dropping it low range diffs on and crawl our way through here. At least in this little section coming up about now, where it sort of nose dips down and back up, some trucks with a bad chin can catch there and then it pretty much stops you dead. Well, I will say at this point, you'll see, I'll move the camera in a sec, the loaf is actually pushing from behind and giving it a little boost. I mean, again, he's always a little beast. He's always helping where he can. But again, I mean, it felt relatively comfortable getting over that. I didn't feel like, oh, it's going to get stuck any second. You just ain't doing it quickly. See, where I disconnected the loaf there, I actually gained a bit of speed. A lot of trucks like the Dolphin can tow the loaf and it doesn't really make any difference to speed. With this, it does. And it does with a lot of trucks, like a lot of the weaker / lighter trucks. It can be an advantage and a disadvantage. One advantage can be, if you're towing a loaf behind you, and it's, say, dead weight and it's slowing you down a few mile an hour, you actually take a lot less trollish damage from the game. Going down there, I mean, I suppose it's another nose test as I go into the quarry. It didn't dig its bumper into the ground when I got there or anything. Look at this place. I'm pretty sure I organised all these trailers alphabetically last time I was here. Somebody has turned up and messed everything. Probably a dairy. Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, I mean, I'm in auto. It's kind of, I put it in high again. It doesn't stall, but it's not got enough bite to actually like wind up into high gear properly. I'm just kind of bleeding a lot of power via wheel spin. Two lots of slabs. To be fair, it didn't really just suddenly stop dead, although, as I've said before, they have fairly recently removed a lot of big rocks that were kind of in that little yellow square that used to be a bit of a pain, like meaty and juicy rocks. Getting up to this point, it must have been a bit cargo from the other day when I did the Zix. Leave that scattered around. Just sent in the loaf, he's just at the top there, and you'll see I had to go back and get this footage because I forgot to save it the first time. So I had to kind of quit this, load the game back up. Yeah, basically, there's a lot of weight at the back of the truck anyway, and now with the trailer with a lot of weight on it sat on the rear axles, I don't have much weight pushing my front end down, so as you can see, the steering's struggling to bite in. I almost roll here, that's why I stuck a winch to the loaf, hence why I have a loaf sat there just in case. And it unpacked the trailer, so I just had to roll back down to pack it. Fortunately though, I'm kind of at a better angle now where it doesn't make the trailer tip insane amounts. And I forgot to put it back into low range with the diffs on. So I get stuck now, put low range with the diffs on, they just stay locked. But when I let it roll back a little bit, again you can see the lack of weight at the front. It was able though then to climb up here of its own accord, which to be fair, there's a fair amount of trucks that kind of do struggle on that bit a bit. And it also pulled those side rails of the semi-trailer kind of through the lip of the first hill, but again, lack of weight on the front means I just haven't really got a lot in the way of steering. I mean, I believe we're pretty much wheeling at this point, yeah, so they're just not touching. But it does actually make it up under its own steam, which, like I said, is not bad. It's yeah, there is a lot of I mean, the Derry, for example, the Derry 4520, the supposed most expensive king truck of the game, couldn't even get up that first hill unless the loaf was pulling it up. Because he's a goddamn horse, but still. 11 grand horse pulled a Derry up better than a 191 grand Derry could. Yeah, part of the lack of steering at the front, obviously I had to do a 3-point turn there. And when I get to this point, it's certainly not the only truck that's done it, but it wants to roll. It unpacked the cargo, but fortunately it didn't fall out. And again, I mean, like people have said it before, I prefer the flatbed trailer looks-wise. You can see the cargo on and all that, but the sideboard trailer gives you kind of a second chance. If your cargo unpacks, it still stays in the trailer unless you fully flip it beyond 90 degrees. So yeah, a little bit kind of iffy working around there, but again, it's not the only truck that's tried tipping there, so I was already kind of ready for it, hence why I flung a panic winch out. Going for the third quarry hill, you never know really. I mean, it powered up those first two hills by itself, but we'll see. Basically, it looks like it's struggling now, and that was already low range with the diffs on, but I'll let it roll back a bit, floored it again, and then we're able to climb higher. However, this is the issue at this point. It now starts to wheelie. It's so steep, the front just lifts up, swings right. I can't really stop it by that point. So I edited like about 30 seconds out there, trying to just straighten the thing up, and then it starts to tip. So of course, it was time to send in the horse, as usual. I was trying to think which winch point. I was like, yeah, go for the middle one, we'll see. It's a bit awkward like winching it from here, because this hill sort of leans a lot more than the camera makes out, but no problem for the old loaf. Job done. It wasn't particularly difficult to flip. I'm just showing you now, just for a comparison, I've now unpacked the cargo. So again, for anyone who's a bit newer that doesn't know about this, when the cargo's packed, it introduces its weight, but when the cargo is unpacked, it's not weightless, but it's a lot less weight than it would be if it was packed. And as you can see, with unpacked cargo, it dries up this hill a lot easier. And again, well, I rarely, if ever, use that glitch cheat, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, just letting you know it's there. And again, like I said, if I had a flatbed trailer though, those bits of cargo would slide off a hell of a lot easier. But you can see that I was able to make that top turn in one. It didn't tip there. It doesn't make a difference. This is packed again, so. I mean, the main issue was, like I said, every time I got to this bit, it just kept flicking the nose round to the right. So I stuck a winch to the loaf, but as it swung round to the right and I winched the loaf, I kind of yanked the loaf a little bit out of his little loaf hole. I mean, he's still doing bloody well considering this thing is not happy about getting up this hill. It's all good. What I'm trying to hopefully do is reach one of those trees up there, but it ends up grabbing that fuel tank. So the reason I left this little bit in, obviously, yeah, I nearly went to go there. I had to let off the handbrake, all the rest of it, stuck the handbrake back on. It does a big old wheelie, but thankfully the nose didn't swing left or right, so it didn't go too crazy. Just quickly moved the fuel tank, put the loaf properly back in his little loaf hole, stuck a winch on it. And again, I'm trying to get the nose to go round. In the end, I sod it. Hit the winch, let's go for it. Loaf's dug in pretty well. See, now it's swinging over to the left. That's really, yeah, once you can get a winch to that tree, you kind of at least sort of locked in this position where, yeah, you can start to work out your next plan. I cut most of that out because honestly it was about a minute and a half of faffing around. It wasn't that the loaf was there or anything, it was just the nose kept swinging the wrong way while I was trying to winch those trees, and I was trying to kind of get my nose round the corner rather than just hitting straight into those trees. As well, I remember, it's got, was it a 285 litre fuel tank, is it? It burns fuel quite quick. I mean, partly is like, because you spend a fair amount of time low range with the diffs on, you're not getting a lot of speed for your fuel. And that's where I said, like, the Dolphin, even though that's got a smaller tank and it uses a lot, it makes good use, speed-wise, of that fuel, so it'd be one of them where it wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphin could go further on 200 litres than this thing could on 285, just because the Dolphin will be able to stay in high gear and motor through a lot of bits of terrain that this thing would be, yeah, low range with the diffs on. So not only would the Dolphin probably get further, but you'd also quicker as well, probably like, you know, 30 to 50% quicker. Yeah, you can see it being a pain. I was trying to winch the loaf. I was like, that's the one, I'll do. I'll leave him there. He can get himself out from there. Yeah, a little bit gutless to get started, but we drop it in high. Flying down here. Is it here? Right, so yeah, steer into it a little bit. There. Otherwise it might have tipped. I mean, I don't even know if this is a useful part of the test. I just like flying down this hill after I'm done. That's how well that went. Like a glove. And yeah, with the low, I was just showing you though, because this time it's actually letting my steering work. Probably because I'm like, and obviously the engine started. Fires up. Yeah, but I was just showing you, I can actually just jiggle my tyres, wiggle my loaf forwards, and flick him back on his wheels. That's what I like about the loaf. He can get himself out of all sorts of situations. Of course, yep, climbs up that rock. No issues, going for the top diving board again. I can't resist. This is like my favourite way down. Didn't go. Landed it pretty nice, but had a little bump. Did a wheelie. Did some kind of roly-poly. You see now, you'd think, oh, his back end's tipping like over his front end. He's a goner. But I was like, cool, have a quick sip on my coffee. Seen this before. Like I said, I don't start, you ain't turning the key hard enough. Fires up and we're good to go. So I started winching it from like the middle winch point, and it was not levering it around as quickly as I would have liked, so I just stuck a winch to the front. Mainly, yeah, trying to get the truck straight with the trailer. And to be fair, I could just go down the hill now and winch it, like roll it the easy way. But the loaf, he's a goddamn professional, and I was curious myself, just to, you know, weight characteristics wise, rolling characteristics wise, what had happened. So I was trying to flip it this way, which the loaf has done with multiple trucks, but as you see, kind of happens with this one's happened with some other trucks as well. Instead of it rolling towards me and going back to its wheels, it's just kind of being dragged up the hill upside down, which is quite funny how a lot of trucks can't even get up that hill by themselves, whereas the loaf can pull them up the hill upside down. It doesn't even need them on their wheels. And like, again, the Derry 4520, the supposed king of the game, couldn't even get up that first hill unless a loaf was pulling it up there. He's a goddamn professional. That's good. I'll bet I was having a little sip of my coffee or something. But yeah, we got it up to this point. Well, there's no, I mean, I could just keep dragging it. It'll just keep dragging, I think, on its roof at this point. So, give it a little nudge. And then it almost wanted to go, like, don't even think about it. Wise to them games by now. So yeah, as usual. Loaf saves the day. This thing, going for a little ice test. Managed a Jeff special. So yeah, it went pretty well the first time. Jeff special my way over the ice. It's the most fun way to travel. What I did notice though, which is kind of cool, this thing, it's not 100%. It can break the ice and you can fall into it, but it's light enough to where, yeah. I mean, you can see I was going a little bit slow there. The back end started to dip, but so I think for this time or pretty soon coming up, I put it into high gear. I think it'll get over. Like, keep your speed up really in the high gear. But yeah, it can clearly get over bits of ice. Like, you've got a chance because it's not heavy enough to break them straight away. And again, that factors back into the power to weight ratio. It's S plus because this thing don't weigh a lot, not necessarily S plus because it's got a lot of power. At this point, I mean, I drove back, I rolled it, came back. I drove over a bit where I'd already broke it a bit. Once the back started falling in, it slowed me down, the front went in, and at this point, yeah, screwed. So I went and brought the Western Star, sorry, the twin steer. Gave it a little nudge of encouragement, as you do. Seesaw loaf. Of course I brought a loaf. Be rude not to. Plenty of room on that truck. So he likes leaning. We still ain't letting go. And you see, that worked. Now I can drive out under my own steam. So overall, I have to say, that's pretty decent as far as trucks go for ice. There is others that can go over ice, but yeah, this is one of them, so can't really complain. I believe the step toe, I'm sure that got over the ice. Again, that's another very light truck. Crossing this little river bit on flooded foothills. Yeah, so I was going to try it in auto. I stuck it in low range with the diffs on because the current's starting to carry me a little bit. Not crazy or anything, but it's just like, okay, let's just get on with it. And to be fair, it did get over there, no real issues or anything like that. That scout is like a glitch bait thing again. If that ever vanishes during an update, I'll know that this map is a little bit bugged. Yeah, when I did the Zix over there, the Zix was pretty good through this sort of mud, but this mud acts like super mud for most trucks, and this is certainly no exception. You can see it was very slow. Yeah, low range diffs on. It's not really any other good choice. Going down the runway here, I mean, long story short, this truck not only is able to do the Jeff Special, but it kind of auto Jeff Specials even when you're not trying. I'm just in auto now, and as soon as you get up to like 7th or 8th, it starts taking off, going pretty quick. I didn't see what the speedo said, but I definitely know we are. Yeah, going pretty quick. Go for a jump. That's not bad. Some pretty good distance there. So it's stalled for what? Yeah, well, I had to have a few goes at this because it's good. This time though, took the all-wheel drive off. Did I Jeff Special it on this, or did it just do it by itself anyway? Oh yeah, stick it in high. It went for it. Oh yeah, started to drift to the right. I was like, oh my god, I hate this bloody post. Thankfully, it kind of flicked my nose up in the air rather than stop me dead. But again, some pretty good distance. Not far off hitting that trailer. Not many of them can hit that trailer. That's why I had another go now though, because I wanted to do it where I don't hit that bloody post at the end of the runway. Such a terrible place to put a post. Especially when they've made this clearly give us a little ramp at the end. When it lands, this is kind of like a one thing I do quite like about it, if I'm honest. It floats at the front, but it's not one of them where it kind of floats and that's it. There's enough weight at the back because it's very rear weighted. But there's enough, yeah, like there's enough grip that I can reverse back out of here. It's funny as well, even though my front is fully floating, you can still steer. Which it does it with a few other trucks, but I'm just saying it's like that's just part of the game. I'm not complaining on that. Probably shouldn't mention it. That's no my luck. That'll be the one thing they patch out. Bringing the loaf with me. It didn't do very well off it. It couldn't get up in nowhere near Jeff Special when it was towing the loaf. In the end, the loaf's like, yeah, fuck yeah. That was an embarrassing attempt. I'm not even jumping down with you. It kind of landed on its wheels, but as you can see, it carried itself over. So again, it's not amazing at like staying planted on its wheels. Alright. I mean, Loaf's got his new engine now. For all I know, he might just leap the whole gap and land on that island over there. Fingers crossed. Well, he gets into 5th gear in about a truck length now, which is quite nice. But yeah, sending the Loaf, as usual, not really a surprise to anyone. He lands on his wheels and span himself around ready to assist in mere seconds. And to be honest, I probably should have pulled forward a little bit here, because I didn't give it... Like, when you have a very short winch length like this, it just doesn't retract and bring the winch in as quick as it does when it's longer. So in the I was like, sod it, drive forward. Trying to give me an epileptic fit or something. Snow flashing. Again, it's like, where's my bloody winch point? Can't you just start the winch in the direction I'm looking? That's all I ask for. And this kind of shows you, I mean, the Zix 605R was easier to tip than this thing. It's not that it's struggling, the Loaf's pulling it forward. It's just that it's not eager to roll back to its wheels. It's quite happy sitting on its side. Eventually it sort of digs into, I assume, where my Loaf was kind of chewing the terrain up. And it flipped it. So yeah, because it floats at the front, there's no point in doing a traditional drowning test. So instead I'm going to try and cross this bit over here and see how well it does. Obviously taking a Loaf for me. One thing that is kind of nice though, now I can turn the engine on and off. Obviously I can turn it off on the Loaf at the minute so he can go submarine mode and he's not going to take any damage. And yeah, having a little cruise in the sea. See some people on a boat like, ahoy. Keep staring, it's like, what are you staring at? Never seen a bloody truck take his Loaf for a walk in the sea before. Need to get out more. I mean, yeah, I think it's doing pretty well here. This is probably close to like Voronggrad levels of good at getting over here, which, for anyone who doesn't know, that was like the best truck at crossing over here. Does the same thing, floats at the front, plenty of grip at the back, is actually able to drive through the water and can steer even though its wheels are clearly like 10-15 foot off the ground, but I'm not complaining. For whatever reason, it's veering over to the left a little bit. I am trying to steer right. It does eventually, like, yeah, now it starts steering on the water, as you do. But nonetheless, this is, for me at least, it's pretty cool. It's probably one of the biggest things throughout doing this review tonight that kind of made me think, oh, well, yeah, alright then. I'm not too bothered that I own it. Like, if it wasn't for this, not that it's a terrible truck, it's just, yeah, a bit middle of the road kind of thing. And, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say this thing in and of itself makes it worth it. Like, the Voronggrad can cross that the same, and it's just a better truck in general. But still, this is probably one of the biggest wins it had of the night, so I may as well sing its praises while I can. Climbs up that hill pretty nicely as well, to be fair. Scoot a few of those rocks out of the way, but yeah, it gets up there. If I turn, I can't remember if I turned the loaf engine back on by that point, but I think I had, to be fair. So the loaf can get up that hill as well, so it would have been towing its own weight really for the most part. I didn't see that tree to the last second, but yeah, this thing, little to no hope of killing a tree. This is like my little reward. When I get this far, I get to jump off here. As usual, this thing just dies, the loaf. Goddamn professional, does a little 360 because he's a beast. And then he freezes when he's back, ready to go. It wasn't letting me switch vehicles straight away. He lands. The engine's in the red, by the way, because I got the new engine. Yeah, instead of having 170 health, it has 70 health. So it takes a lot less before it's showing up as like a red engine. And now we're on this point to where like that thing is oh yeah, I mean, there you go. Like, insanely easy. Done. Goddamn horse. Oh yeah, look. I'm moving the rocks out of the way. This might actually be a viable way to get rid of some rocks. Just honk your loaf horn at it. I mean, look at that little rock on the left side. No, get away from me. Get away from me, rock in the water. Where you belong. That's right. Again. God, is there anything he can't do? I mean, what are we, over a year now? I'm still trying to figure out anything he can't do, and I haven't found anything yet. Climbing up this mountain on White Valley. Again, I mean, it's pretty good at climbing steep hills, to be fair. Shall we say minus a heavy trailer that makes it wheelie. But on its own, it's fine at climbing. Because it's got the chain, it can even go up this rocky bit. I didn't have to scoot over to the left and use that snowy bit. Beach is a tiny bit here, but again, the rear weight is enough to just scuff them over. So it made it this far, which, yeah, was good. It's a good start. Well, 46 minutes in. Probably a bit late for a good start. Go down here, I mean, I had absolutely no faith whatsoever it was going to break this tree. Most things can't, to be honest. There's only probably 4 or 5 trucks that have ever managed it. And yeah, splat. Not a chance. This was back on the other side of the mountain that I just drove up, but I was trying to roll it on purpose just to see. It's like, is it going to settle back to its wheels? So you can see that it landed on its wheels, but it went again. These trees are helping a bit, but it is what it is. That's the bonus you get. It did eventually actually like stop on its wheels, so yeah, scraped by on that one. And I mean, that's about it for the all the testing. I mean, as far as, like I said, it is above average, just not that much above average, and there's nothing it can do that we haven't already got something else that can do it mostly better as well. Yeah, crossing the water, the floating thing was pretty good, but the Voronggrad can do that, and that's a free truck to everyone and all the rest of it. So yeah, the other thing as well, I'll sort of show you in a second, is the GMC 9500 and all that. Money-wise, is it like 158 grand or something, fully upgraded, which is pretty expensive for what it can or can't do. When I scroll over to it as well, is it like over 100, is it 107 grand stock? For comparison, this GMC 9500 is literally a quarter of the price, and then some, has near enough the same stats, has a bit better durability, a bit higher fuel consumption, slightly smaller tank, slightly bigger wheels though. They're both sort of engageable diffs, all-wheel drive, all the rest of it. So yeah, there's a little description there. It just says it's sort of some old tried and tested thing. It's got plenty of power, which to be fair, it's not bad on the power. Like I said, it gets the S Plus partly because it's quite light, but it's still pretty decent. It did pull that semi-trailer up the 2 Quarry hills, which is not bad. Yeah, look, as I scroll through these, this is the trucks it reminds me of. The White Western Star and the GMC 9500, and you can see as I'm flicking through them, I believe the GMC and the White Western Star's got 1 inch bigger tyres. They're all raised, like all similar power to weight. The Brigadier's got the best power to weight, but these things aren't too far off. And yeah, like I said, with the GMC 9500, they never intended that to be all-wheel drive, so they buffed it in other areas to kind of make up for the fact that it wasn't all-wheel drive. And then they added all-wheel drive, but they didn't remove the other things that were slightly better, so especially for the money, it's probably a third of the price fully upgraded. I think the GMC can do just about everything this thing can. So yeah, that's kind of the conclusion I came to. Unless you're really going to put a lot of hours into it, I wouldn't waste your money really. So yeah, that's about it for today though. I hope you enjoyed, I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon members. Get yourself a loaf of course, and I'll be back soon.